In the past 10 years, I have worked with over hundreds of children with autism in both school setting as an EA and home setting as a BI. And today I will share with you 10 early signs of autism in young children so you can detect these early signs early on and hopefully seek professional help to get your child diagnosed. So just a disclaimer, I'm not a licensed consultant. I'm just someone who worked in the field for over 10 years and I'm here to share my experience. Always seek licensed professional help to get your kid diagnosed. So the first early sign is hand flapping, or what we call stemming. So hand flapping and stemming is basically repetitive behaviors or sounds that helps the children self-calm when their sensory is overload. So for example, if they hear any loud sound or any textures that they're touching that is bothering them, they would tend to repeat the same behavior over and over and over again. And to normal people's eyes, we might not be able to see it, but if you observe a certain behavior or sound that the child keeps repeating, that's basically stemming. So for example, hand flapping, or some kids might even make sounds like ee, 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 like things like that. So a repetitive behavior or sound. The second sign is self-harm behaviors or head banging. So kids do that because they sometimes they seek attention, or sometimes they're processing sensory issues, or they just attempt to communicate. So for example, if you see a kid banging the head on a glass or a wall, that's a very obvious sign. Sometimes they would do skin picking or even like scratching. So a lot of the kids I worked with before, on their arm, sometimes they would pick until they bleed, or they have very red rashes on the arm because they keep scratching it. And sometimes it could lead to a very serious issue if it causes very serious self-harm. But at the same time, we have to understand that it is a common strategy for them. It is sort of like stemming. So the third sign is rocking back and forth. So a lot of times you will see a autistic children just sitting there, zoning out, and they will just walk back and forth, and to your eyes maybe it's for no reason, like they're not really doing anything, but is actually a again stemming behavior that that will calm them down, and also they're seeking some sort of sensory satisfaction. And for the same reason, some of the autistic kids that I worked with before, they love going on swings. So same kind of movement that they really seek the satisfaction. And also jumping, like sitting on a gym bouncy ball, and they jump on it like that, and they would make sound like that while they bounce around and swinging back and forth. So any motions that are up and down, side to side, it really calms them, and it's a sensory satisfaction that autistic children really enjoy. And the fourth sign, and which is also the biggest sign, is meltdown. And this type of meltdown is not the meltdown that a regular kid would throw, not a tantrum that a regular kid would throw. It would not stop even if you give the kid a treat that they usually enjoy, or a toy, or any calming videos that they usually enjoy. And this type of meltdown, it wouldn't stop. It would go on for 15 minutes, half an hour, out, and sometimes even up to 2 hours. And they do this because, again, it is a sensory issue. So sometimes it could be some very subtle things in the environment that they're in that really bothers them and causes a sensory overload, and that would um, causes the meltdown. The fifth sign, and that is extreme obsession in certain objects or things. So for example, one kid I work with, he is very into cars, he would look up car videos, all types of car videos on YouTube, and he would mimic the sound, mimic different engine sounds, like very specific, specific. He would even copy the dashboard, the speedometer of different types of cars, and he have them memorized. So it is to that extent, extreme obsession. So the sixth sign is lack of response when you call the name. So for regular children without autism, when they're very young, when you call the name, they would have eye contact with you. You would have gotten their attention, okay? And for kids that are older without autism, they would respond to you, yes, and they will have eye contact with you. You have their attention. But for children with autism, a lot of times when you call the name, um, they will not have eye contact with you. You cannot get their attention, and they would still be in their own world, doing whatever they're doing. They could be fondling something, something that they really enjoy, but they would not respond to you when you call the name. The seventh sign is also tied to the last point, and this one is lack of communication. So when you try to talk to the kid, when you try to have a dialogue, a communication with them, they would often not be able to reply or give the correct answer to your question. So sometimes you ask them, hey, how are you doing? What are you doing? They'll be like, yes, I'm 7 years old. Something like that. Like um, you would not be able to build a very meaningful verbal communication with kids with autism. So now on to the eighth point. Okay, the eighth sign is what we call echoing, and it is also um, often occurs when you try to talk to them. Okay, it also ties back to our last point, lack of communication. Uh, when a kid is echoing, they would repeat what you say. Okay, so when you try to talk to them, they will say, "Hey, how are you doing?" They will say, "How are you doing?" without really looking at you or without trying to come up with a meaningful answer. They are simply repeating what you're saying. Well, how old are you? How are you? Hey, do this. Hey, do this. Something like that. They would just reply what you're saying, or maybe the last few words of your previous sentence. The ninth sign, which is also my favorite one, and this one get confused a lot because it doesn't you cannot find this in all the kids with autism, only certain kids, and this is some kind of talent or super abilities. So what I mean by that is maybe they are very good at memorizing things. So for example, this kid I worked with before, he can memorize everybody's birthday down to their year in his class. Or maybe he can memorize all the Star Wars characters, all the names and the planets they're from. Or maybe they have some kind of photographic memory. They're really good at math, things like that. So it is some kind of talent. And this doesn't always occur in every kid with autism, only certain kids. So this is not really a very good indicator of autism, but some kids with autism do have certain specific talents. And the last point, the 10th point, is kids with autism, sometimes they are very picky eaters, okay? They would they would not eat something not because they don't like the taste, right? Like regular kids, sometimes I don't like vegetables, and they just don't eat vegetables. But for kids with autism, it's very specific. It could be the color of the food or the texture of the food that they don't like because it would give them a sensory overload. So when you try to give them some food that they don't like, a lot of times they will have a meltdown, and that is also a very good sign that they have some kind of sensory issue, and therefore they might have autism. And it could be also the other way around. There are certain foods that they really prefer, and they will be obsessed over it. They will want to eat it every day, and um, even though it's junk food, it's well, every kid's like junk food, but it's some kind of sensory satisfaction that they might get, and that's why they always want to have those food. So they're very picky eaters. So that's it, guys. Those are the 10 early signs that could exist in child with autism. And of course, there's a lot more symptoms and signs in children with autism. Those are just the most frequent and obvious um, signs that I can tell from my experience, and just use it as a guideline. And always seek licensed consultants' help to get your kid properly diagnosed. And hopefully you enjoy my first video of this channel. There's many more to come, and my goal for this channel is to build a community of parents and special need workers and also children, and hopefully this would flourish and become a very big platform that we could bring awareness to autism. All right, see you guys. Take care.